Welcome to Growleap Academy, where we cut through the noise and explore ideas that help you grow in your mind, your work, and your life. And welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that came up from the materials you shared with us. It's about a word, actually, that, well, it often carries a lot of baggage. Discipline.
Ah, yes.
That word.
Exactly. You sent over a real mix, some personal development pieces, notes on behavior change, and your own questions about why discipline feels so, I don't know, hard or restrictive sometimes.
That's right. And our goal today, our mission, is really to dig into these materials, see what key insights pop out, and maybe understand what the sources are suggesting discipline truly is.
Right, maybe what it isn't.
Or what it isn't, exactly.
Okay, let's start right there then, because looking across everything you provided, there's definitely a clear theme about how we usually see discipline. Most of us, let's be honest, kind of flinch when we hear it.
Yeah, there's an immediate reaction.
We picture, strict routines, forcing ourselves, maybe getting up super early when it's still dark.
Yeah.
Right, the cold showers image.
Totally. It feels like restriction, like pressure,
Yeah.
maybe even punishment.
Absolutely. Several of the pieces you sent really hit on that negative vibe. One article, I think it was the productivity one.
Yeah.
It talked about how discipline often gets mixed up with like squashing your natural impulses, being super rigid, almost feeling less human.
Right.
And it gets tied into these ideas, the common narrative these sources describe, of not being good enough, that you have to whip yourself into shape because you're falling behind or you're failing some impossible standard.
Yeah, and your own notes mention things like school discipline, which was usually a consequence for messing up, right?
Exactly. A negative thing.
Or that really intense no excuses culture you see sometimes. Fitness, business, maybe.
Hustle culture version.
Yeah. It's this idea that discipline is basically a hammer you just use on yourself.
Precisely. And this view, which the sources suggest is pretty widespread, paints this picture where structure just equals suffering. And controlling yourself means feeling ashamed if you slip up. And any progress has to come from, like, hardcore self-denial.
And, okay, so this really intimidating image.
Yeah.
According to the materials, it leads somewhere pretty unhelpful, right?
Totally counterproductive.
Because when people inevitably stumble, which, your notes pointed out, that's just being human.
Right. It happens to everyone.
The first thought isn't usually, okay, let me add some helpful structure back in.
No, definitely not. As one of the behavioral articles discussed, the instinct then is often comfort.
Yeah.
Distraction, ease, whatever feels good right now.
Why is that, though?
Well, think about it. If discipline feels like going to war with yourself, then picking it back up after you've fallen off feels like choosing to go back into battle, a battle you just managed to escape. Who wants to do that?
Nobody. Okay, so that's let's call it the old story of discipline, the one that feels pretty negative and is reflected in these materials.
Yeah, the common perception.
But where do these sources start to flip the script? What's the different angle on discipline that starts coming through?
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. A core idea, and it popped up in multiple sources, especially one of the personal growth articles, is that real discipline, the kind that lasts, it doesn't come from hating yourself. It doesn't come from thinking you're not enough.
So it's not about hating where you are right now.
No.
It's more about caring where you want to go.
Exactly. It's rooted in self-regard. That's a really powerful distinction the sources make.
Self-regard.
Think about it. You don't carefully maintain something you don't value, right?
Yeah, you don't bother.
You don't build protective fences around something you think is worthless. When you operate from a place of actually valuing and respecting yourself, well, you naturally want to show up for yourself.
Even, like one piece highlighted, on the hard days, when you really don't feel like it.
Especially then. And that's the big shift these sources identify. That's where discipline stops feeling like punishment, something done to you, and starts feeling like protection, like something you do for yourself, out of care.
So it's not a tool of control that runs on guilt or shame.
Right.
It becomes an act of caring, fueled by self-respect.
That's the core argument in these materials. They suggest that, sure, relying on pressure, guilt, shame, that might give you a temporary jolt.
Like the panic when a deadline is suddenly tomorrow.
Exactly. That adrenaline rush. But it's not sustainable. It's not the foundation for lasting consistency.
It's like trying to run your car just on those emergency fuel bursts.
Yeah.
Instead of, regular maintenance and actually filling the tank.
That's a great analogy. What the sources really highlight is that sustainable progress, that inner stability. It comes from this base of self-regard. When discipline comes from caring enough to build systems that support the life you actually want, it changes the whole feeling of it.
So it's not beating yourself into shape.
No. It's building a structure that holds you steady.
Okay, I like that. Building a structure.
Yeah.
But if discipline is this protective act of self-regard, how does that fit with the feeling that it's restrictive? That came up too, right? In your notes, some articles.
Yeah.
This idea that structure limits your freedom.
This is maybe the most counterintuitive point in the materials.
Yeah.
But also maybe one of the most powerful. They argue the complete opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah. Discipline, framed this way, actually creates freedom.
Okay, hang on. Creates freedom. How? That feels like a contradiction, especially given what the sources said about feeling trapped by routines.
Let's unpack the contrast the sources draw. Okay, picture waking up, no plan, no structure for the day at all.
Okay.
As one article described it, that first moment might feel like total freedom, right? Infinite possibilities.
Yeah, that blank page feeling. Exciting for like the second.
Exactly. Then maybe a little terrifying. But what usually happens next, according to these sources, you scroll aimlessly, you hesitate over tiny choices. Should I do this email now? Or that chore? Maybe coffee first. You just kind of bounce around reactively.
Yep, sounds familiar. Definitely had days like that. And the result?
Well, as the research bits you sent pointed out, by the end of that unstructured day, you're often just drained.
Exhausted.
But not usually from doing productive stuff, right? It's from the mental load of constantly deciding and reacting.
The decision fatigue.
Exactly. That's not really freedom. That's just mental exhaustion and getting pulled around by whatever pops up.
Okay, got it. So now contrast that with a day where you've applied some of this self-respectful discipline.
Right. On a day with structure, as described in the materials, there's a flow. You've already decided, roughly, when key things will happen.
Okay.
When you'll take breaks, maybe when you'll do things that actually recharge you.
So you're not stuck in that endless loop of tiny decisions. What now? What now?
Precisely. And the sources really emphasize how crucial that is. Discipline, by giving you structure, drastically cuts down on decision fatigue.
That makes so much sense. Every little should I or what next just drains the battery a bit.
It really does. And by pre-deciding the basic shape of your day or your key habits, you save that precious mental energy.
For what?
For the actual work, for thinking creatively, for engaging deeply with what really matters.
Yeah.
The article suggests this is how you become someone your future self can actually count on, by consistently freeing up your focus through structure.
So freedom isn't the absence of structure.
Yeah.
It's the presence of structure that lets you point your energy where you want it to go.
That's a key interpretation presented, yes. Freedom in this context means being able to act with clarity, with intention, even when you don't feel like it in the moment. It's about building momentum. And, this is critical, building that deep, quiet self-trust.
Because discipline, understood this way, it's not about being controlled by rules. It's about being consistent enough to earn your own trust.
Exactly. And that self-trust, several sources point out, is the bedrock. It's the foundation for resilience.
Right.
It gives you a stability that fleeting motivation just can't.
Yeah.
Motivation, one article compared it to a wave, powerful, but unpredictable. It comes and goes.
Sure does.
Discipline, though, is like the solid ground underneath that wave. It keeps you steady, whatever your mood is doing.
So it's not getting swept away by cravings or moods or the latest excuse your brain cooks up.
It anchors you. And the sources you sent suggest there's a really profound outcome to this.
Which is?
The more you cultivate this consistency, this self-respectful showing up, the more inner peace you feel, more groundedness.
Because you're not just reacting all the time.
Right.
You're actually consciously leading your life.
You are. Making choices aligned with your deeper goals, not just getting tossed around by impulses or what everyone else wants.
This reframing, it also tackles that image we talked about earlier, right? The harsh inner drill sergeant. If it's not about being hard on yourself, what does being there for yourself actually look like in practice?
The materials really define it as fundamentally self-reliability.
Self-reliability.
It's less about toughness, more about trustworthiness. Can you count on you? Not just when it's easy or you feel motivated or someone's watching you.
But when it's tough, or you're tired, or nobody would ever know if you skipped it.
Especially then. One of the pieces you shared had a great analogy.
Yeah.
Think about a friend who's always canceling plans last minute.
Ugh, yeah. Know the type.
You might like them, right. But over time, you learn you just can't really rely on them. You stop planning important stuff around their word.
Definitely. You adjust your expectations way down.
Right. Now, apply that internally. When you keep breaking those little promises to yourself.
Like, I'll start tomorrow, and then you don't.
Or just 5 more minutes scrolling, which turns into 30.
Guilty.
Or just giving in to resistance again and again. What happens is you erode your own internal reliability. You chip away at it.
You break that rhythm of showing up for yourself.
Exactly. And the sources stress this isn't because you're weak or flawed. It's just the natural consequence of inconsistent actions damaging self-trust.
Okay.
Self-respect, they argue, isn't built by hitting some perfect mark. It's built by consistent, imperfect showing up.
Imperfect showing up. I like that.
It's proving to yourself again and again, when I say I'll do something, I follow through, even if it's just a tiny bit.
So the focus shifts away from the perfection of the outcome.
Totally.
And onto just the act of showing up.
Exactly. And the sources highlight the power of what some called micro-agreements or small wins.
Micro-agreements, okay.
These are the promises that feel almost too small to matter.
Like what?
Like going for that walk you said you would, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Sticking to your bedtime, even when you're hooked on a show. Pausing for just one breath before reacting when you feel triggered. Like one piece suggested for emotional regulation.
Okay.
Writing one sentence. Just one. Not the whole chapter.
These aren't big, dramatic things.
Not at all. They're not heroic. But they're foundational.
How so?
The sources argue that when you consistently keep these tiny internal contracts, your brain starts to internalize a new default. Hey, I can count on myself.
Ah.
And this quiet, steady buildup of reliable action creates genuine, lasting confidence from the inside out.
So it's not based on external praise or hitting some huge goal.
Nope. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you are there for yourself.
And that kind of internal reliability. It feels more like inner peace, doesn't it? Not like a rigid cage you're forcing yourself into.
It absolutely does. And that connects to another really crucial point in the materials. This kind of discipline is adaptable.
Adaptable.
It's not brittle. It doesn't shatter when life gets complicated. It doesn't punish you for being human.
Okay.
The sources point out that it actually listens to your energy levels. It gets that some days are harder. It allows for real rest and recovery, but without totally abandoning the commitment to showing up.
So it's not all or nothing. It's more like, okay, maybe the full workout isn't happening today.
Right.
But we can do 10 minutes.
That's the core principle highlighted.
Right.
We'll do the version we can realistically do today.
Okay.
And that's enough. It's enough to keep the consistency muscle working to maintain that self-trust.
And that flexible, self-compassionate approach. That's why this kind of discipline actually lasts.
The sources suggest that's exactly why. Because it's built on respecting where you actually are right now, your current capacity.
Yeah.
Not forcing yourself into some rigid ideal you can't possibly maintain.
That leads perfectly into some of the key pieces of this. Gentler, more sustainable discipline that the materials explored. And the first one, like you said, is maybe the most surprising, based on how we usually think about it, integrating rest.
Yes. Completely turns the push till you drop idea on its head.
Right.
Your sources made a really strong case that seeing rest as the opposite of discipline or just some reward you get after burning out. That's totally missing the point.
So the common way is push, push, push.
Correct.
Crash, and then collapse and call it rest.
Exactly. And the materials are clear. That's not disciplined rest. That's just reactive damage control.
Ouch. Okay.
True discipline, as presented in these sources, actually includes recovery. By design.
By design, okay.
It's based on understanding that rest isn't what happens when you fail. It's what you strategically plan for so that you can keep going sustainably.
So it's not just stopping when you hit the wall. It's actively scheduling and protecting downtime.
Precisely. The sources talked about proactive things like intentionally scheduling screen-free time, taking actual breaks during work, not just powering through for hours, planning lighter days or weeks, and crucially, learning to listen to your body's need for rest before it starts screaming at you through burnout or getting sick.
So rest isn't an indulgence. It's essential maintenance. It's fuel.
Absolutely. Critical maintenance. The sources used analogies like, maintaining a car or training an athlete. You wouldn't expect peak performance without planned recovery and refueling. Our bodies and minds are the same.
Makes sense.
Without intentionally building in rest, any attempt at discipline, no matter how fierce, is probably going to fizzle out eventually because the underlying battery is just depleted.
So protecting your recovery is just as important as protecting your work time.
Maybe even more important, the sources suggest, for the long haul.
Okay, so integrating rest is huge. What's another key piece that came through in the materials?
Prioritizing consistency over intensity.
Okay. Consistency over intensity.
This is probably the most actionable shift discussed. We're often, conditioned to admire the big, dramatic effort.
Yeah, the all-nighter, the extreme workout, the crushing it phase.
The beast mode thing. It looks impressive, right? But as your sources pointed out again and again, that tends to be episodic. It's exciting, feels powerful maybe, but it's really hard to keep up.
It burns out.
Gentle, sustainable discipline, though. It's not measured by how hard you went today. It's measured by, did you show up at all? Mm-hmm. Can you keep doing the thing day after day, week after week, without just vanishing for long periods?
Because intensity is flashy, but consistency is what actually builds the results over time.
That's the core argument. Consistency builds habits. Consistency turns small efforts into big progress. And like we said, consistency builds that solid self-trust.
Yeah.
The sources emphasize you don't need punishing effort to achieve things. You need reliable, persistent effort.
So lowering the bar sometimes, that can actually be the more disciplined move.
Absolutely. Several pieces made this point really strongly.
How so?
Doing the 10-minute workout instead of skipping altogether because you don't have an hour, that's a win for consistency.
Okay.
Writing just 100 words when you feel blocked instead of waiting for that perfect 2-hour window that might never come.
Yeah.
Meditating for 1 minute if 10 feels like too much right now.
It's not compromising. It's adjusting the entry point so you keep the habit alive.
Exactly. It's a smarter strategy, according to your sources. It prioritizes forward motion, even tiny motion.
Right.
And consistent forward motion is the only thing that really compounds. The goal isn't intensity for show. It's reliability for results.
Okay. Rest, consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And the sources also tackled the big one. What happens when you mess up?
Mm-hmm. The inevitable setback.
Yeah. When you miss a day, fall off the wagon, break the streak. How does this gentler discipline deal with that?
This is where that self-compassion part really comes in. The sources basically frame missing a day not as failure, but just as being human. Life happens. You get sick, things blow up, you forget. Some days you just have zero energy. It's normal.
So missing a day doesn't wipe out all the previous effort. It doesn't mean you're back to square one.
Not at all. And this is so important to counter that all or nothing thinking.
Yeah, that's a trap.
In the old, rigid punishment view, missing a day often triggers guilt, shame, feeling like you've ruined everything, and now you have to start over from scratch.
Which naturally makes it way harder to actually get back to it.
Exactly. It creates this huge mental barrier. But the gentle approach described in your sources, it allows for a smooth return.
No drama.
No drama, no self-flagellation needed. You just acknowledge it. Okay, missed yesterday. Accept it without judgment. And then get back to it at the very next chance.
You just pick up where you left off. No big announcement, no guilt spiral.
That's exactly the approach recommended. Your identity, in this way of thinking, isn't tied to a perfect streak.
Right.
It's tied to your consistent willingness to come back to the practice, day after day, even after you stumble.
That consistent return. That's the real discipline.
That presence, that commitment to getting back on track without beating yourself up, that's where the lasting change happens. So the sources collectively suggest, look, if you want discipline that actually supports you, don't build it on hyper punishment.
Build it on.
Build it on respect, simple rituals, intentionally, including rest, and the quiet power of just coming back when you stumble.
The goal isn't perfection.
Never perfection, just faithfulness. Faithfulness to the life you say you want, and that needs a steady hand, self-care, not a rigid fist.
So bringing all these ideas from the sources together, discipline seen this way, it's not really about toughness or squashing emotions or proving something to the outside world. As the material suggests, it's really about proving something crucial to yourself.
It's like the everyday language you use to show yourself your own worth. It says, my goals matter, my health matters, my time matters.
I matter.
I matter, exactly. Every single time you follow through on one of those small, consistent promises, even when it feels hard or tiny, you're sending a clear message to your future self.
What message?
Hey, I've got you. You can count on me to show up.
And that, fundamentally, that's not punishment. The sources frame it as maybe the purest form of self-respect in action.
True discipline, as these materials articulate it, it doesn't come from outside force or those flashy bursts of motivation that just fade. It's built slowly, steadily, from a place of real care. Quiet devotion.
Devotion to what?
To your own well-being, to your future self, to building an inner world where you genuinely know you can rely on yourself.
And this kind of discipline, it doesn't leave you feeling drained or always fighting yourself.
Quite the opposite. It grounds you.
It doesn't make you rigid. It makes you ready, resilient.
Ready to lead your day with intention, not just react. Ready to protect your focus, your energy. Ready to follow through, not just when things are easy.
Right.
But maybe even more importantly, when things are hard or uncertain or just plain messy.
Okay, so based on digging into these sources together, maybe here's a final thought, a challenge. Drawing from those actionable ideas.
Yeah.
Choose one thing, one single, small, simple, realistic promise you can make to yourself for this next week.
Make it really doable. So doable that, deep down you could probably manage it even on your worst day. Yeah. Maybe it's drinking that glass of water first thing. Maybe 5 deep breaths at your desk. Maybe 2 minutes tidying one tiny spot.
Whatever it is, make it specific. Make it feel gentle. And then just focus relentlessly on the consistency every single day this week.
Because the real power, as these sources highlighted again and again, it's not in how big or impressive the promise is.
Right.
It's entirely in the quiet, faithful act of keeping it. To yourself, repeatedly, day after day, proving your own reliability.
Do that.
Yeah.
Just show quietly, consistently, with enough self-respect to gently guide yourself back if you miss. And you will gradually, fundamentally, become someone your future self looks back on and genuinely thanks.
Not some perfect, idealized version, just the consistent one, the present one, the one who showed up.
And in doing that, you turn discipline back into something really human.
Yeah.
Grounded, genuinely supportive.
It stops being a tool to control you.
And becomes
a path to trusting yourself.
Thanks for tuning into this deep dive from Growleap Academy. We hope it left you with something to think about and something to grow with. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.